Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
My guest today is author and TED speaker Nathaniel A. Turner. He's the author of several books, including The Amazing World of STEM. Turner appeared on many national outlets, including Black Enterprise, iHeartRadio, The Good Men Project, The Washington Post and USA, USN News, and World Report. Well, Nathaniel, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Actually, thank you for inviting me back. Appreciate it.
Well, if you come back, that must mean you were good the first time. So
that or you felt sorry for me.
Well, since mercy is not my strong point, that wouldn't be the case.
Well, I know better than that. You give grace and mercy. Come on, brother.
That's true. Well, you know one of my opening questions, and I'm curious again to find out if your answers changed, but can we kind of give me the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow. So I'm going to say I probably haven't gotten it yet, but up until this point, I think the thing that comes to mind is, as a person thinketh, so are they.
Okay.
No. I don't know if that's advice. My grandmother used to tell me, there's a lot to think about. My grandmother used to tell me, you should know the tree by the fruit that it bears. And so I talk all the time about trees and fruit. So yeah, those things stick out to me.
Yeah, they do. And, I love that because it reminds us it's a biblical frame too. Jesus talks about they'll know you by your fruit. And so if you're a tree that doesn't produce any fruits at all, you cut that tree down. Right. So you need to know, you think about the kind of impact you're having and things you're producing by your actions and by your presence in the world.
I was just saying, I think she was also reminding me that one day I was going to be a parent. So instead of being so harsh and quick about what my parents were doing, she was just reminding me, one day you might be a tree and you may have some fruit. So okay.
Right. Be careful when you judge other people's fruit.
Absolutely. Right. And there's the other, right. People who live in glass houses throw no stones. Right. So lots of great advice.
Looking at your bio, you have accomplished so much in your life. And I'm curious, as you think back to your life and the people who have impacted it, who is someone that stands out, and kind of tell us what about them impacted your life so?
Yeah, so I just talked about my grandmother. I think she's been gone now since 2011. She lived for 103, just short of 103 years.
Wow.
So even she's gone in the flesh, but she's still here with me in spirit. I think perhaps she may have had the greatest influence, not to dismiss anything my parents or anyone said, but she helped lay the foundation for me to even listen to advice and know when advice was good. So I'm going to go with my grandmother.
That's
Final
good.
answer.
I like that. Final answer. So I'm curious too, you mentioned your grandmother and how impactful she was. What did she teach you about leadership?
I don't know that she taught me anything directly other than to just watch. So words and deeds. And so my grandmother probably wasn't going to say a whole lot, but you just watched her and watched how people interacted with her, how people felt about her. When she passed, how people showed up when she turned 100, so I just watched the leadership in terms of how you treat other people. And I'll probably say, may talk about this later, but I think she helped me to understand this thing that I actually share with people today, that I believe the most important word in the human language is who. And I think start to learn that from her, why the word who was so important.
Wow, that's cool. Someone told me about leadership, the most important question to ask is why.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna switch it up for you and tell you throw why in the garbage.
But I can see that, because it's like, it's interesting, because I'm dying to hear why you tell me that. But let's get into that question. So why would you throw it in the garbage?
Sure, because I think today when we think about why, I think it starts with a speech that Simon Sinek gave years ago, and it was a TED Talk, and he said, "Great leaders begin and end with why," and everybody loved it, and everybody ran out saying, "You got to know your why. You got to know your why. You got to know your why." But why is transitory, and people didn't stop to ask, what is he talking about? First, he's talking about leadership. He says, "Great leaders begin with why." Well, I would even say that that's incorrect, because leadership is not about why. Leadership is about who. Who are you leading? Right? And it doesn't matter why until you have the right people to understand that you're a leader and are willing to be led. And so I'd say the most important word is who. And that is, who did you help? Who did you serve? Who knew their life mattered? That's one form of who. I also think of who in this context. One day you and I are not going to be here, and someone else is going to write your obituary, and someone else is going to show up and give your eulogy, and someone is going to write those last words that are etched in stone on your tomb or your urn or whatever. And what they're going to write is not why. They're not going to write why you were here. They're going to write who you were. Keith was so-and-so. Right. Keith was so-and-so. And the people who get up and speak are going to tell about who you were to them. And those last words are going to tell who you were for all eternity. And so I think if that's what's important, I don't know why we focus so much on why. Why I worked when I was a child is different from why I work today.
I love that. Yeah. Somebody also said they remember you for who you were and how you made them feel. So I think that's kind of on the same way. It's like, did this person make me feel valued, important when I was in their presence, or was I dismissed by them?
And here's one more who thing to tie on. So if you ask me, and I always use this expression, "Hey, Nate, what kind of father are you?" And I'd say, "Come on, Keith, really? You're the greatest father in the history of the world, bro." And then you might say, "Well, hold on. Well, what does your son think? Because you are his father. What does your son think?" And I was like, "Come on, Keith. He thinks I'm the greatest father in the history of the world." And then you might say, "Let me call him." And they might say, "Mr. Haney, Dr. Haney, my father's a jerk." And then I'd say, Who am I, Keith?
Right.
Am I who I thought I was? Am I who I think my son believes I am? Or am I who my son says I am? Because the relationship I have with him as father and son, he gets to determine what kind of father I am as much, if not more so, than I do. So I think it's critically important, especially when we think about the people we have intentional relationships with, to know who we are, at least to them. Yep.
That's good. I like that. So tell us about the book you wrote, The Amazing World of STEM. What led you to write it?
Okay. So The Amazing World of STEM is not just mine. So I co-wrote it with my son, Naeem, and it's illustrated by a brilliant, highly talented young lady by the name of Kiva Richardson. And Kiva came into our life during the pandemic. Naeem was home during the pandemic. And we had always talked about writing a book that would have been a book that he would have wanted to read as a child. And so that book was that book was The Amazing World of STEM. And the objective was to tell a story about a kid whose life was loosely based on his, who is a precocious, burgeoning engineer who wants to do something big. And he understands his who, and he wants to lead a planet better than it was when he found it.
So you and I talked a little bit offline. Tell us kind of last time we talked on the podcast, he was working on his PhD. So tell us how he turned out with that.
He finished. He is now, he like you is now doctor. He's now Dr. Naeem K. Turner Bandelli. He received his PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon in May of 2000, last year, 23. He defended his dissertation around this time last year. So, yeah. And then now he finished up, and while he was in his started his last year, he was also applying for graduate schools, for business schools. And so now he's at NYU working on his MBA in quantitative finance and entrepreneurship.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I bet you're so proud of him.
I'm grateful. Yeah, I try to, the story about pride. So I try to avoid that.
I love that. So I'm going to ask you one of your own questions about the book. Absolutely. Who is your target audience for this book?
Sure. So early readers, children primarily up to the third grade, because of the science around third grade reading. If children are not reading by the third grade, there's 2/3 of those children who can't read by the third grade are likely to either be on welfare or incarcerated. So our goal is young readers. And then I would say secondary or parallel corresponding audience are parents, because we really find it that parents don't always listen to when you try to share with them what's going on, but maybe if we can get them to hear it or see it through the lens of children, maybe they'll pay a little more attention.
I'd be remiss if I didn't have you define. I know most of us probably know what STEM is, but some people hear that and go, I hear the term, but I don't really know what the term means. So unpack what the word STEM means.
Right. STEM is the acronym for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
That's good, because we always use these short terms.
Yes, we do.
And we don't always, people like, if you got to stop and think what it is, then you miss some key parts of that. So I'm glad you did that for us.
Yep. That's it. That's STEM. That's the acronym. Yes. In his case, the character's name is Stuart Tyson Elmo Morgan. And then all of the names originate from famous African-American engineers.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For the readers of this book, we know we want to get them to read, but what do you want the readers to know about STEM as they pick up this book and dive into it?
STEM, the character, or STEM, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics? Which one?
Well, just kind of tell us as they read the book, what do you hope the students are getting out of this? Because we want them to read.
Sure. But
what is your goal when they read this book? What do you hope they come away with?
Yeah, I think there are multiple things. One, I want, first of all, I want young people to enjoy the book, to want to pick it up and read it, and then see themselves in the character. So I want young people to see that there's great possibilities for them to do amazing things, thus the amazing world of STEM. And I want them to see that the things that will happen in the future are going to be driven by what they learn today. That's like the largest thing. I just want young people to be encouraged, like my son has been encouraged, to dream of doing things that seem incredible. So I had someone say to me, "Hey, Nate, this seems a little far-fetched that these kids build a car overnight." And I said, "Yeah, but why is that far-fetched? A lot of stuff we have is far-fetched. You and I today having a video conference, you're somewhere else in the world. I could pick up my phone and we could do it.
Right.
40 years ago, that was far-fetched. An electric vehicle was far-fetched. Seeing a home be 3D printed with concrete was far-fetched, or green concrete. Like everything that we see today at one point in time was far-fetched. So I thought, well, it's interesting. But you're an older person, and hence you have stopped dreaming. And because you've stopped dreaming, you're like one of the most dangerous species on the planet, because you're a dream killer. So you're telling young people not to dream of doing something. I'm like, okay, man, this is interesting. So yeah, I want young people to be encouraged and see through the lens of a child that you should dream, and there are anything you can do.
It's funny you talk about engineering, and one thing we just talked about. I just had an engineer on who has his own company, and he says the hardest thing he's been trying to find are people who actually are good at engineering. He's like, people go to school to be an engineer, but they don't love engineering. They're not gifted at engineering. They're not smart enough to be engineers.
Wow.
And he was very discouraged. He's like, if I could just do one thing, I would love to have people who love it and were good at it so I could hire them. If you know any engineers who were good out there, send them my way.
Right. That's disconcerting, isn't it?
It is disconcerting. And so for someone who loves education like you do, and your son is in engineering, is there some way you can encourage parents to say, how do you get your kids to do what you just talked about? How do I get my kids to see beyond today and dream about the future? Because to be in the future, you need people who are good at science and technology and engineering and in math. But how do we get our kids to love those things that open up an enormous possibility of opportunities for them?
So Aristotle, I'll start with from the beginning. So assuming that a child is a newborn, and so there's like a fresh lump of clay, and we haven't messed them up in any capacity. Aristotle said famously, "Bring me a child at 7, I'll show you the man." And so I think implicit in that statement was that who we become happens from 0 to 7. And then child psychologists will say something very similar, that most of our personality, certainly most of the brain is developed by the ages 3 and 4. Most of our social skills, et cetera, are developed by age 7. So the question you're asking is, how do we get more engineers who really love engineering? Well, we have to raise children to, I would say engineering is more than just the science of engineering. To his point, I think it's having a passion for something and wanting to do something great with the tool that you have, which is the ability to do whatever type of engineering you do. So I would say that's the first thing. And then I would say once children are beyond that age, again, like earlier, we have to find a way to get young people to continue to dream. Because part of, I think, the reason why maybe people don't love engineering as much as we don't love anything. I'm an accountant and I don't love accounting, right? So I'm not an accountant anymore, right? I got a law degree and I don't love law, so I didn't want to practice. And the question is, but who do we want to be? And what do we, and I would say, if today was my last day on the planet, and this was, I would ask anyone else, who do you want people to say you were? Right. And maybe in that, we find the ability to use the tools that we have in a way that suggests we really are passionate or care. I don't know if passion is the right word, but we care enough about the subject matter to be great at it.
Right. I had a guest talk about the fact that he doesn't like the word passion because passion is really dependent upon your current circumstances. He said, I'd rather you look at purpose rather than passion. So he hates the passion driven person. It's like,
and so I wanted to correct myself. Like, no, I don't mean passion. No, that's not what I mean. Yep. But a purpose.
Your purpose driven purpose. You have a lot of diverse characters in your book. Do you have a favorite of all the characters in your book?
Well, I'm a father, so the favorite character to me would be Mr. Morgan. But no, STEM has to be my favorite character because I'm the dad of STEM, of the real life STEM. So I love that cat to death. So I love the character. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So tell us about the other characters in your book.
So of course there's Mrs. Morgan. And I don't have the book in front of me. So there's Liam, there's one of his classmates. But the book is diverse. And what we tried to do is represent as many cultures and as many religious backgrounds that we could possibly offer, because both books have a different series of characters. In the second book, there's a lady named Miss Washington. We purposely named her Miss Washington after we named her Martha, because we wanted to drive home the point. Well, what would the United States care? Would we care differently about homelessness if it was Martha Washington? Right. If it was if we were talking about George Washington's wife, will we find homelessness to be an issue that we should solve? So, that's we're trying to show this. The UN says there are 17 things that threaten the existence of the planet, and our hope is that we'll write 17 of these books, and in each book we'll tackle one of those issues that relates to what's keeping us from maybe having a planet to continue to live on.
That's great. I love that. Great vision for what you're doing. Women feature prominently in your book. And so tell us, I think women today, I think the gender roles in our society today have been so kind of skewed. But tell us why you feature women so prominently in your books.
Well, they're at least 50% of the population. So
yeah, that's right.
so they have to appear. But I want again, I just want young people to see themselves in a book. And I'm afraid sometimes, okay, I'll just say it, as an African-American author, I don't want to write a book that just has African-American characters. I get it.
Right.
I don't knock it. People can write whatever book that they want to write. But I don't live in a world that's just comprised of people who look like me or think like me or share the same experiences, the same walks of life. And I understand that my life is better. It's more rich when I have a diverse group of people to share experiences with. And so I wanted the book to suggest that, or I should say we wanted the book to suggest that. My son's life is a very diverse, rich life. That was on purpose. He's a young man who's, multilingual. He's a young man who's lived in other parts of the world. He's a young man who's seen what abject poverty is, not in America, but outside of America. And so you could never see those things if all I was ever going to do is look at the world from one lens. And that's really the objective, is to broaden the perspective.
That's powerful. I noticed that in some recent studies, our kids have fallen behind, especially in science, technology, engineering, and math. Mm-hmm. For those parents who are listening, why is it so important that for our communities that STEM is an important part of our kids' education?
Yeah, well, I would say STEM is everything, and everything is STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are everything, and everything is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There is nothing that we do or can do or have ever done, now far, to be honest, without that. And the fact that we just don't see it that way is a problem. So one of the things I would want to do is get parents to see it differently. You and I are on a piece of technology, and it's science. And we're on a piece of technology, right? There's technology, and somebody engineered it, and it took math to figure out how to write the code and do whatever to make this possible for you and I have this communication. But hardly any of us are building these kind of platforms. So if I wanted to only look through the lens of an African American father, I would say, well, where are the African American Riversides? Where are the African American Zooms? Right.
Right.
And if you're saying you don't always want to be consumers, then you have to produce stuff, and then you have to produce stuff that's going to be used today and in the future. There's car manufacturers, there's Tesla, there's Lucid. There are all these people making electric vehicles because they see that as something in the future. But then I'd say, well, where's the black Tesla? Right? Where's the black Lucid? So I think it's critically important. Otherwise, all the community is ever going to do is be consumers. We're never going to be producers in a society that's moving increasingly, first of all, global, and as well as STEM focused.
I've had a lot of entrepreneurs on my podcast, and what I love about entrepreneurs is they see things before, and they become successful because they do something that there's a market for, and they can develop that. And so I think you're right. Having that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics background, the next level, the next tier of innovation will come in those four areas, those four fields. Yeah. And so if you really want to be out there on front, you got to be the one that's creating the next generation of whatever that thing is we're trying to create.
Absolutely. I mean, again, like I said, everything has always been that way. When the cave people made a wheel, that was technology, right? And it was mathematics, and maybe they didn't have a ruler, right? But they figured out that, hey, these edges got to be smooth in such a way. It was, and then when Henry Ford decided to make a vehicle, right, and we decided to have a plant, industrialized plants, that was, science. And then, to now, so we're always doing it. Even as an author, you and I we don't print books. We
No.
don't get books like we used to buy them, and you read them online. We don't watch television when we used to. We stream it. We look at YouTube, and all of that is math and science. And so we're all consumers of all that. So it's incredibly important that we make sure our children can compete. Um, Otherwise, I'm just not sure what the state of Black America, African Americans, any other historically underserved or underrepresented groups. I don't know what the future state will be if we don't start to do better in those subjects.
And we need Jamal to emit that flux capacitor so we can fly our cars around.
Well, look, let me tell you something. There are people working on flying vehicles, and there are some. Yeah, they're just but they're not us.
Right.
They don't. They're not us.
I love that. For parents who want to make sure their kids are successful, what do you say are some of the biggest mistakes parents make regarding school? School is one of those things that's so controversial.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some mistakes that parents make when it comes to school?
Well, schools purport all the time that parents are children's first teachers. Right. If you go into school, and then you go in there and you ask the teacher, well, when did you teach the parents to be teachers? When did the parents learn to be teachers? So I think that's the first thing, is that this nation, this nation has to make a decision on whether or not we want that to be a true statement, or we want to continue to lie. If the parents are the first teachers, well, then parents are not masters. We're not master teachers. So I would say that's the first thing. Parents in this country in particular we are so conditioned to outsource everything to somebody else. We have a child, the hospital kicks you out in 36 hours. You go home and you're immediately trying to figure out when you can go back to work, and you're looking for childcare. And so I get it. Like, I do understand these are some realities, but maybe this nation ought to have a process so that parents can actually understand how to start educating their own children, and not wait till a child is 6 or 7, or in some states as old as 8 before they have to go to school. So I think that's the first thing. The parents have to understand that we are the first teachers. And if we are the first teachers, then we have to be prepared to actually be master teachers, not just, hey, Gaga Google, you look really cute. Hey, I'm gonna count. Let's count 1, 2, 3. No, we gotta be trying to help our children to learn to read as soon as possible. Certainly before 2, we have to figure out how to help our children count and do some math, some basic math by the age of 2. Start to introduce them to science. If it's just walking through the garden or walking outside or looking at a weed and talking about the color of the weed and how weeds grow, like, we have to be completely invested in that.
I love that. We talked a lot about your current book, and you say you're working on new things. So what are you excited about in this season of your life?
Well, right now I'm excited to be here with you. So, because I focus on
I like
being
that
present.
answer.
So I'm just present, Keith. I'm excited about this moment right now to be here with you. And really, what I'm really excited about, seriously, is trying to be better about being intentionally present.
Yeah, I like that, because if we don't do that, we end up always wondering what could have been. Mm-hmm. And missing out on what is. Your kid's life, as you just talked about, your son's already at NYU, he's got his PhD. Those days and those moments go by so quickly. Yep. And so you really do want to be there and be present for the important people in your life. So I love that.
Yeah, I just want to be present. I mean, obviously I have goals. I have goals and objectives, and I have a vision board and all that kind of stuff. But really, when I'm with someone, I'm working. I'm working to be just present, because so often we're not present. Like I could be sitting here anticipating your next question and not be fully present on this question. Like be present.
Right. And then I have to throw you a curveball just to make sure you're awake.
Right. Right. And I'm like, can you repeat the question? My mind was somewhere else. Yeah.
As we wrap this up, I want to kind of know what key takeaways do you want our audience, our listeners to gain from our discussion today?
Well, I really want people to think about, again, who they are. We have this thing, well, corporations have it first. It's called a UVP, which is a unique value proposition. And you've probably heard that if you're at an institution or some organization, how do we distinguish this organization from another organization, or this school, this university from this school? And they have unique value propositions. I think I'd like people to start to think about the question of who. But in addition to that, I'd like people to think about creating their own personal value proposition, so their own PVP, so that when you meet someone and someone says, well, who are you? You can tell them from the lens of your personal value proposition. And you can be reminded yourself about who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to show up.
That's good. I like that. So where can people go and find the book, The Amazing World of STEM, and learn more about you?
I was told to say recently that instead of saying you can find the book everywhere books are sold, to say you can find the book where fine booksellers exist, because not all people carry your book. So we don't get them any credit. That's what they told me to say. But you can find a book just about wherever books are sold: Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Apple Books, etc. Where can you find me? I have a website. Like most people, it's Nathaniel, Nathaniel A. Turner, TURNER.com.
And you have a date for a new book that's coming out, or that's your latest?
So I've been doing something really, really unique, and I guess if Robin was here, she's the person who helps me host it. She would say, "Shame on you." About at the first of the year, and I may have mentioned this to you. Each morning I wake up. Before I talk to anyone, say anything to anyone, I write my life as I'd like it to be, as opposed to the way that it might be. And so I call it journaling forward. And I've been doing it now for about 5 years, and probably into the first year, folks were asking me, what are you doing? You seem a little different. I told them this process I was doing. So some people started asking, can we read it? I shared it with a few people. One of those people I shared it with was Robin. And like you, she's Reverend Doctor. And so Reverend Doctor said, hey, this reminds me a little bit of my daily word, etc. Each day. You know what you should do, Nate? You should give action items and you should give reflections. And I said, you know what you should do? You should stop talking to me. If you want to do it, have at it. And she did. She went back and reviewed 55 of them, and that became the book, Journey Forward. Well, when Will Smith did his book, Will, and did the audio version of it, she, my wife, others, my son, thought it was so good to hear him read his own book that they said, you should do the same thing with your journal. And so now the journal appears 3 times a week. It's everywhere: Spotify, Apple, Yahoo, it's on not Facebook, YouTube Music. There's a YouTube channel for it. So 3 times a week you can hear these journals. You hear me reading it, and you hear a wonderful gentleman by the name of Dave Campbell. He's from Ontario, Canada. He produces it. He adds the music to it. He makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about. And then Robin comes on at the end, and she tells you what to reflect on and what action steps to take for that journey.
Wow.
So I guess I'm excited about that.
And where can they find that? Under what?
It's called the Journal Forward Audiocast.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
Great. Well, Nathaniel, thanks so much for taking the time again and being an awesome guest again. I appreciate what you're doing and the focus and the attention that you remind us to pour into people, and especially our kids, because it's so important that we do that. So blessings on the work you're doing.
Thank you again. Appreciate you. And congratulations.
Thank you. Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @BKeithHaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again and tune in next time.